Hi, my name is Christopher Malcolm. I'm a director DP based in Los Angeles, California. I also write a little blurb for f-stoppers. So today I'm here to talk about a brand new camera from Nikon. It's the Nikon ZR. And it's not the ZR as in rangefinder. Instead, this is actually very much of a video-centric camera. Now, first off the bat, let me apologize for not having the camera physically here. I will do some doodads here and insert some images. But I did actually get a chance to get my hands on a pre-production model, so I thought it might be helpful for me to come out with just a little short video today to tell you a little bit about the pros, the cons, what gets me really excited, and why this is definitely a camera that I want to add to my kit. Now, when you hear the name Nikon ZR, your brain is probably going to jump right to thinking that this is some kind of rangefinder camera, and that would make sense. But in this case, the Nikon ZR is really firmly pointed at the video shooter, but also a very specific kind of video shooter, which is what makes it interesting to me, and which is why I say it's probably something I'll pick up. Now, if you're a fan of mine on f-stoppers or you subscribe to this channel, you probably know two things. One, I hate talking about gear. I think gear's fantastic, but too much focus on gear can get in the way of what we're all here to do, which is to create art. The second thing you'll know if you're subscribed to this channel is that I almost never post on this channel, especially not these kind of gear reviews. So the fact that I'm making an exception here is really an indication of how important I think that this camera could be to where Nikon's going in the future, especially with regards to the Nikon-RED relationship. Which I myself as a Nikon shooter, it gets me really excited. So a little bit about myself to begin with, just to give you a little bit of context. So I'm a filmmaker, I'm a director DP. I work mostly with like Alexas or also Red cameras. I own a Red Komodo, which is actually shooting this right now. So those are the kind of cameras I used to work with, more like cinema bodies. But I've also worked as a still photographer for nearly 20 years, doing stuff for companies like Nike, Asics, Lululemon, a bunch of people who wear sneakers. And as a still photographer, my brand of choice has always been Nikon. It's always been just for some reason, it always felt right in my hand. It's been the thing that I've really built my whole career on, are different forms of Nikon cameras. So as a photographer, I shoot with the Z9. That's like the perfect camera for me, for how I work. And as much as I'm sure advertisers won't like to hear this, but I don't know that I'll be buying any new still cameras anytime soon, for the simple fact that it's just such a perfect camera for me. But there's only one thing about that camera that doesn't quite suit my needs, which is that it is big. It is a chunky boy, which I don't mind actually when I'm shooting, because it's like it feels good in the hand. It's very comfortable to hold, and when I'm working professionally, I know that thing it's like a tank. It's not going anywhere. It's gonna stand up to the task. But in all my maneuverings to get different cameras and figure out the cinema camera, this and the other, one camera I don't really have is like a small walk-around camera. I used to have like a X100V, and I had like the Nikon, the ZF for a little while, or ZFC for a little while, which was fantastic. But as I am primarily a filmmaker, what I've always wanted was like a little tiny camera, like the equivalent of walk-around photography camera, but that had top-tier cinema qualities. That could record the codecs that I needed, that could record footage like that. Even if I was shooting it as B-roll, it could easily integrate into something that I might shoot with a Z9 or an Alexa or a Komodo. And that's what really gets me excited about the ZR, is that it is tiny in form factor. Again, I'll put a little link here to kind of show you the picture. I got a chance to test it out in person, which is great because I'm going to use it for a project coming up. But, the actual part of the day, the rehearsal, I didn't get a chance to actually shoot any footage of the camera. I just got to shoot with the camera. So when I get an actual camera in hand again, I'll actually do it. I'll come back and do this again, and I will show you the camera in person. In the meantime, you'll just have to be okay with the pictures that I'll put on the screen. But as I said, the thing that gets me most excited about the camera right off the bat is just the small size. I can have a pocketable cinema camera in my pocket, and I can do the same kind of walk-around video that I would do, that I used to do as a photographer, so walk-around still photographer. Now I can do that in a cinema body that records all the codecs that I need, that I can actually integrate that into my professional work as well. Speaking of which, let's get to the 3 key reasons why I think for some of you this is going to be a great camera to have in your pocket. The first thing you should know about this camera, it shoots REDCODE RAW internally. So for those of you who are wondering when Nikon bought Red, when were they going to start integrating products, well, this is when it's starting to happen. So if you're a Red user, or if you're used to cinema cameras, you'll know that REDCODE RAW has an incredible reputation within the industry. It's very widely used. It's got an incredible color gamut. It is very easy to manipulate and post. And one of the cool things about having REDCODE RAW for a professional filmmaker is that it's very easy to integrate into your workflow. So for instance, on my Z9s, I'm used to using the Nikon RAW, which is fantastic, and it's perfect for me because I work at a DaVinci Resolve. But there's still a lot of editing platforms that don't recognize NRAW, whereas something like REDCODE RAW is just universally recognized. You're not going to have any problems bringing that into any editing system. If you've got a long workflow and you've got multiple parties involved, they're not going to have any problems working with your footage. It's really a major boon to your workflow to be able to have that inside of a Nikon camera now. And I think that's going to give Nikon a real boost in this kind of space, and in terms of trying to win over professional filmmakers, because now you're working with the codec that they're all very, very familiar with. Now, I'm not 100% sure exactly if like the exact same kind of flavor of REDCODE RAW as other. So I'm sure there's a little bit some finagling in there. As I said, this is just my preliminary review. I will come back once I get my hands on a production unit of the camera, and I'll talk about this in more detail in terms of like, you know, exactly how fungible is the Nikon version of REDCODE RAW versus the one that's in my Komodo, but we're definitely headed the right direction. Now, for filmmakers, it's also very important to note that Nikon's claiming you're going to get 15 stops of dynamic range out of this, which, I mean, if that's true, it immediately becomes the highest dynamic range camera that Nikon makes. Now, I should admit, I'm not one of those people who puts on a lab coat and does dynamic range test. I'm not, you know, I'm more of a look and feel kind of guy, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of those types of tests and reviews that come out once the production units start rolling off the line. But even if it's close to 15 stops of dynamic range, again, it would put it is the top of the Nikon line in terms of dynamic range in video. Speaking of dynamic range, but just in a slightly different sense, this camera also has internal 32-bit float audio. Now, for those of you who don't know what 32-bit float audio is, essentially the easiest way to explain this is kind of like the raw version of audio. So you still need to get your levels right, you know, just like lighting a scene. You still need to get your exposure right. 32-bit float audio, you still want to try to get your levels right. But the amount that you can kind of raise or lower within 32-bit float audio without really drastically increasing your noise floor is significantly better than in traditional forms of audio recording. So right now I'm recording 32-bit float audio, but I'm recording it to a field recorder that can actually do that. So apparently the Nikon ZR is going to be able to do that right there inside the camera, which is, so especially for those of you who are working quickly and maybe, you know, your audio doesn't always exactly precise, having that in camera is, you know, and not having to bring around a field recorder could be a major asset to anybody looking, especially like content creators, solo operators. You're moving quickly, you're trying to get things done, and you just need a little bit of wiggle room to make up for slight adjustments in post. Nikon's got you covered. And back to the top, again, you know, all is coming in a very small package with a fully articulating screen. So for those of you who are especially, again, content creators, or the way I see using this camera, really, I see this as kind of being like my everyday camera, you know, when I don't want to build up the Komodo, or I'm walking around and I don't want to carry my Z9, I can just kind of have a camera like this on me at all times, as well as use it for like kind of like lightweight incognito content creation type camera, travel camera, anything like that. But again, with all these incredible pro features and codecs built into the body. Now, there were a couple of weird things about the body that I wasn't particularly a fan of. They're not the end of the world, but I should tell you about them since we're doing a kind of brief review here. It's got 2 card slots. One CF Express Type B, which is great because that's what that's kind of the best format in my opinion right now, is a CF Express Type B. The second slot is one of those micro SD cards. Now I'm guessing that the micro SD card can't record the same codecs that you can record onto the CFast Type B card. I don't know that exactly for sure, but that's my guess. So realistically, you're talking about really one main card and then the other one just kind of as an emergency backup. The other thing that I'm not crazy about is that the battery and the memory card are both accessed through the bottom of the camera, through the bottom of the hand grip. So depending on how rigged this thing is, since of course this is a video camera, it's possible it might be rigged up in a lot of situations. Depending on how rigged up, it may or may not be easy to get to that compartment without taking things apart. So for that part, I'm not super in love with that. But you know, it's a small body, so not everything's gonna be perfect. One thing I did note about this camera, which wasn't actually a problem, but it's something just to keep an eye on. So I tested the camera out while I was also kind of rehearsing for a film that I have coming up. And so I had brought the 2 actors in, and I kind of did the little bit of a camera test while I was working with them at the same time. And in that process, I basically just had the camera and I just let it run for like an hour and a half, just trying different things out. And one thing that I did notice, and which would be of interest to some of you, is that it did get pretty hot. Again, this was a pre-production unit, so I'm not exactly sure if that's going to carry over to the production unit. But the body did get pretty physically hot after running for just an hour and a half straight. But it didn't overheat. Like, it never overheated, and there was no overheating warnings. My recording was fine. I was gold, no problem with that. But it was physically hot. So again, that was a pre-production unit, so I don't know if that's something that's going to carry over into the real unit or not. But I said, even if it did, it didn't have any effect whatsoever on the recording of the of the footage. It's just something that I did note, so I should probably point it out to you. Styling-wise, it's a good-looking camera. You know, I mean, it's small, sleek. The version I saw was all black. I don't know if they're going to have different colors like the ZFs or not. But with the ZR, it was really nice, kind of small, compact, good-looking camera. And as I mentioned earlier, this is definitely a camera that's meant for video shooters. So you do still have all the same still photography functionality in the camera that you would have from something like a Z6 III or something like that. But again, there's no EVF. So, you know, if you really want to kind of go out and shoot, I mean, this basically is only the LCD. I don't know if there'll eventually be some kind of accessory that you can kind of add an EVF after the fact, but out of the box, it's just the LCD. There's no EVF, so I wouldn't necessarily say this is like a street photography camera like that. I mean, I guess you could be if you wanted to shoot with the LCD, but really this is a camera focused on video. So if you are like a still photography shooter and you're specifically looking for a still street camera or something like that, I think I would probably steer you towards like the ZF. But if you're a filmmaker or somebody who really prioritizes video, even especially like a travel videographer or something like that, and you want to pack small, this could be a really good selection for you. The other thing that's really important is that this thing is coming in under $2,000. So there may be a few things that are not a little annoying that I'm not super in love with, like the placement of a battery. You're giving me best dynamic range in the Nikon lineup. You're giving me internal 32-bit float audio, internal REDCODE RAW in a Nikon body that's pocketable and I can carry around with me on the street for under $2,000. I mean, yeah, for someone like myself, who again has a lot of Nikon gear already. I'm a professional. I use Nikon. I also use Red as part of my workflow, shooting REDCODE RAW. So for someone like myself, this camera kind of almost hits like that perfect, those perfect crosshairs. So as I said, this is just a short blurb on the camera. This is not a full review. I said I have actually been able to touch the camera, get my hands on the camera, but I got to use it for all of about an hour. So that's hardly an in-depth review. Really what I wanted to do is just hop on really quick since I know the product's being announced today. So I wanted to hop on, give you some short thoughts, give you some quick bullet points on what to expect from this camera if you're thinking about pre-ordering it. I think it'd be great as a gimbal camera, a travel camera, a walk-around video camera that you could also then take that footage to incorporate into other projects. If you're a Nikon professional shooter and you already have one of the hybrid bodies, this is a great extra cam to that. As I said, I have two Z9s. This is automatically slots in as a number 3 Nikon in the lineup. But it can slide in as a number 2 to my Red Komodo because it's got those red codecs in there. So really, this is a camera that can do a lot of different things. So I'm excited to get an actual production unit in my hands and put it through some really kind of real tough tests. As I said, I have a film coming up. I may actually try to use it, if nothing else, as a gimbal camera, but to actually try to use it to shoot some of the same footage and see if I can incorporate that with the footage I shoot with my Red camera. So I'm pretty excited about that. So thanks again for watching. Hopefully you enjoy these types of videos. If you enjoy this kind of video and you want me to do more of them, leave me a comment in the comment section. As I said, I don't do a lot of these videos, but I do think it's important to mention this camera because I really think that this is an important camera in the Nikon Red alliance. This is probably the closest camera we have so far to Red and Nikon really kind of combining tech and kind of seeing what they can do as a joint company. So again, it's only $2,000 camera, so this is still an entry level at that regard. So we're not even at like what they can really do. But as a $2,000 entry level, this is kind of like a trial run to see kind of what they can do there with that joint company. And this is an exciting product. This is the type of thing that Nikon shooters have not had access to previously. So I think this is an exciting product, and I'm excited to see what comes next. So thanks for watching or reading. You guys keep shooting and have a great day.